Hey there, everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to another awesome episode of On the Throttle with Jacqui Van Ham and my buddy Josh TRK out here bringing you all of the breaking news going on out here in motorcycles and power sports. We have got a heck of a show for you today. In my neck of the woods, I'm going to be talking about Josh's most favorite thing ever, which is King of the Baggers Racing. And that's right. Harley-Davidson announced its King of the Baggers team. I'm going to be chatting a little bit about that and some very exciting news about this year's upcoming race season. And you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life, where we talk about the brand Cake. Josh, what you got going on for today's show?
As being as vague as ever, we are going to go to Africa before we go to China via Italy. All of this can be done off road too, so we're gonna use it that way.
Well, I'm going to go grab my passport real fast, but we're all going to have to come on back after this word from our sponsor. Welcome back, everybody. As promised at the top of the program, my first story for today, I'm going to be talking about Harley-Davidson just announced their 2024 race team for this year's King of the Baggers. King of the Baggers, if you are not aware, is one of my most favorite inappropriate motorcycle racing race series going on here in the United States. That's right. They campaign these massive performance baggers on road racing tracks all across the U.S. It is an absolute hoot to watch. They race in conjunction with the folks over at Moto America, and it has been arguably, Josh can't even argue with me. I mean, unarguably, it has been a resounding success. Josh can't even argue it. It's been massive. It's been huge. It's been incredibly popular, whether he likes it or not. And this year's race team is a total doozy. Let's go ahead and jump on in and talk about this story. So this story was ripped directly from our parent website, motorcyclepowersportsnews.com. You can always go click over there for more information about what's going on out here in the world of motorcycles and power sports. They do a heck of a job keeping up with all sorts of awesome news over there. Let's go ahead and jump on into this story. The Harley-Davidson factory race team has announced its 2024 season with an exciting video that ended up out there on the interwebs featuring this year's team riders. Kyle Wyman. Okay, that name should sound incredibly familiar to anybody out there that follows road racing. He is part of the Wyman Racing family, and he is very, very, very talented and very, very, very fast. And his co-teammate, James Rispoli, that's right, Hog Spoli, if you follow American Flat Track Racing, is going road racing this year with the folks over at Harley-Davidson. They are aboard the now Race Prep 2024 Harley-Davidson Road Glide motorcycles based on the all-new touring platform for the Moto America Mission King of the Baggers Road Racing Series. An exciting Wyman and Rispoli will compete aboard those race prep bikes. They are powered by modified Screamin' Eagle Milwaukee 8 131 Performance Crate engines. These motorcycles are based on the all-new 2024 Road Glide. The neat thing about this that I would like to take a second and point out before I continue with the story is the fact that we're seeing really interesting actual real-time trickle-down performance happening from this race series trickling down to their street bikes, which I think has been really cool and kind of the whole point of them entering this road racing series. Wyman returns for a fourth season with the Harley-Davidson factory race team. He won 7 races during the 2023 King of the Baggers season and finished third in the season championship. Wyman is the most winningest racer in Moto America King of the Baggers history, with 12 total race wins at the 24 events since the start of the series in the 2021 season, plus the 2021 season championship to his credit. Wyman also, because he just wasn't busy enough, won the Daytona 200 in 2019. James Rispoli joins the team for the 2024 season after placing second in King of the Baggers Series points in 2023, riding for the Vance and Hines Harley-Davidson team. In 2023, Rispoli won 2 races and scored 5 second-place finishes, as well as 3 third-place finishes. Rispoli began racing Harley-Davidson motorcycles as a teenager and earned the nickname Hog Spoli after winning the 2024 American Flat Track Production Twins Championship aboard a Lotus Motors Racing Harley-Davidson XG750R. He also won back-to-back AMA Pro Racing Supersport Championships in 2011 and 2012. So that is what's going on for the folks over at Harley Davidson. If you don't mind throwing up that graphic, my last graphic for this story, which is their actual season schedule. No big shocker. The race season starts at Daytona. Always a great time. But then what? Clutch my pearls. Look at that date. April 12th and 13th, they are racing at Circuit of the Americas in conjunction with MotoGP. Cannot wait to see this happen. I think this is terrifically exciting. The rest of the series looks awesome. Road Atlanta, Road America, Brainerd up in Minnesota, Laguna Seca, which is always phenomenal. They're going back to Mid-Ohio, which is the first time they've gone back to Mid-Ohio in a handful of years. Again, that Circuit of the Americas date is on there as well. And then there's another at NJMP to wrap up their season. So a very exciting season looking ahead for the folks over at King of the Baggers, and especially for the folks over at the Harley-Davidson team. Josh, what do you got to say about this exciting news going on over at King of the Baggers?
You know, I've got to have a wise comment about the MotoGP racers complaining about the oil that the Harleys will leak on the track. So not only will they have that to deal with, they'll have the bumps to deal with too. No, I mean, look, it has been a popular series. I get that. I'm not going to argue with that. That doesn't mean I'm going to be like sitting down and watching it myself. I will probably catch it at Mid-Ohio. And go from there. I'm open to it. I'm probably not going to have their posters hanging up in my shop, though.
I didn't think that you would, but this has been a phenomenally popular series. This, I feel like, has definitely put the paddles on Moto America road racing and really jump-started it. It is bringing tons and tons and tons of new eyeballs and fresh fans. And for that, I am super grateful. This is a huge win for the folks over at Moto America. Josh, what you got going on for your first story today?
Well, I said we're going to Africa, and you could on this, but we're not actually physically going there. Something about mosquitoes that I'm just averse to. So we are going to instead talk about twins in the form of an Africa twin. Honda just released the information on the updates. It's quite a bit of new things on the 2024 Africa twin. With this, it's a 1084 parallel twin. Increased power and torque. They have not said how much, why, or where, but they've said it's increased. Revised intake and exhaust setups. The refined DCT system for smoother operation. This is one of those things that is just going to get better and better and better with time. Throttle by wire that is updated with a new IMU setup, so there's that easier control with it and smoother control. Also, as you can see, there is a redesigned front fairing with better wind protection. If we go to the next slide, that is going to show us just the regular CRF 1100L Africa Twin. Tubeless tires on this as standard equipment. There is a larger 5-way adjustable windscreen. That's far too many adjustments for me to handle. I'm pretty good with up and down, even if that. But yes, I realize this is Honda's flagship adventure bikes, and they need to do this. Suspension travel on this remains 9.1 in the front, 8.7 in the rear, which is part of the reason that makes the Africa Twin a bike that people that like to go off-road like. MSRP on this starts at $14,799 for the manual and is $15,599 for the DCT. Now, one thing that I find really, really interesting about that, it's only an $800 difference for the DCT transmission, and the DCT has been a huge seller for them as of thus far. I can see this expanding and growing more and more and more because as more people want to get off-road, more people do not want to manage the clutch until they get to a higher level, and this is a great way for them to do that. If we hit the next shot here that shows the white motorcycle, this will be the 2024 CRF 1100L Africa Twin Adventures Sports. This uses smaller 19-inch front for better on-road stability. We all know that a 21-inch is wonderful off-road, but on-road, especially on the highway, it has a tendency to search for potholes that aren't there. Reduce suspension travel on this also. 8.3 in the front, 7.9 in the rear. Ground clearance is also reduced to 8.7. To me, it already looks like there is a rather hefty individual sitting on this bike, like it's smashed down because of those items. It has a larger fuel tank. That's why it's the Adventure Sports, up to 6.6 gallons, down from the 5.0 gallons that the standard Africa Twin. There is a thicker seat with a tool-free height adjustment for that. There's also a lower seat available for it. This comes with the Showa EERA suspension system. That is the electronically adjustable suspension system. All sorts of gadgets and gizmos. This will adjust for your riding, for road conditions, and for the amount of heft that you and your passenger have brought along on your trip. The MSRP starts at $17,599 for the manual, and then $18,399 for the DCT is all. Both of these are expected in U.S. dealerships coming up in May, which is carry the one just a couple of months away. Both, like I said, available in manual and DCT versions, and they are expected to have more details on the engine specs when they come out. Africa Twin has been a great bike for Honda. It's been a great bike for a lot of people that are more dirt focused but want something bigger. What are your these to me, Jacqui, are the most Honda-looking Hondas you could ever find.
These are quite Honda-y looking for sure. No, yeah. I love the Africa Twin since they re-released, relaunched, re-brought these back, however you want to phrase it. Yeah. I thought that these are just beautiful bikes. They definitely, in my vision, in my view, lean more towards dirt bike vibes than some of the more like street bike looking adventure bikes. So it doesn't surprise me that they released the second version that you were talking about, the white guy on the screen right now. It doesn't surprise me that they've released a model that is catering a little bit more towards that on-road crowd, because not everybody is going out and playing in the dirt, even though they dress up and look like it and want to possibly have the opportunity to do it. They're not always really doing that. I mean, let's all just keep it real here. A lot of these bikes are living their best lives out there on the open highway, which is totally fine, and I'm sure perfectly lovely for them doing that. Or just going to Starbucks. Josh likes to remind me, particularly from the GS folks. But no, great looking bike. I love the brass gold rims on this. I think the styling is fantastic. Yeah. I love that it's got the bigger tank. That will make a huge difference for the folks that are looking to be a little bit more street with their adventure. Just a total slam dunk. I think it's interesting that they are making that DCT, very, very close in price to the manual versions of these bikes. DCT in my neck of the woods anyway has really been really polarizing. I know you'd mentioned that has been a really good seller and a pro, but I think it's kind of polarizing. What do you think?
No, it's funny because I know people that it's years ago when I worked with trucks and they were coming out with automated transmissions, which is what the DCT is. If you fight it and try and make it behave like a manual transmission and try and make it do things it doesn't want to do, it's like a wedding. It's like a marriage. If you work together and get along, it's going to work great. If you try and make it do things it doesn't want to do, you're both going to be miserable.
What a wonderful analogy. Thanks, Mr. Josh. So with that, I'm going to go, speaking of a wonderful marriage and possibly not a wonderful marriage, and we've talked about this company a handful of times in the last handful of weeks. So when this story popped up, I was like, oh, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both. And there you have, because it is the facts of life out here, Josh. Unfortunately, a company that you and I both really enjoy and have reported on super recently, e-bike company Cake, announced a handful of weeks ago that they are filing for bankruptcy. Now, I kind of sat on this story a little bit because an interview at the time that came out with the CEO, he had mentioned that they were filing for bankruptcy, much like here in the US, to keep creditors at bay, but they were still, he said, my phone is ringing off the hook with companies interested in talking about partnerships. I kept hoping, I lit a candle, that maybe somebody was going to step in and there was going to be some way of salvaging this, but a handful of weeks has gone past and I have not heard that story to be true. So let's go ahead and chat about it because it appears that it is actually real and it is actually happening that Cake has filed for bankruptcy. Let's go ahead and jump on into this story. Swedish company Cake, the Cake motorcycle firm, files for bankruptcy. Just a year ago, Cake had even showcased a few of its products at the Auto Expo 2023 and was showing interest in the overseas market. Cake was a manufacturer of a range of electric bikes. The Swedish firm made its, again, at the Auto Expo. They've been at the Auto Expos. They've been at all sorts of places, really promoting these bikes hot and heavy. Heck, just a month or so ago, Josh and I reported on a great story about a woman taking a solo trip from the top of Africa to the bottom of Africa solo on one of these Cake bikes, a total PR coup. Everybody was talking about it. Cake, however, has been plagued by internal problems and funding. They did file for bankruptcy after failing to raise enough funding to keep operations going. According to reports, Cake was in the middle of a funding round when a large investor's withdrawal pushed the company over the edge. According to one report, Cake CEO Stefan Ytterhorn has confirmed that the company has indeed filed for bankruptcy. They did so on February 1, although details are not clear if the company has filed for bankruptcy, protection, or insolvency. Like I said, I was hoping this was just a protection move since I have not heard anything since. There is a chance that this is an insolvency move. Since this came to light, there has been more conversation about the fact that Cake, for the last handful of months, has been approaching outside investors, including the company Harley-Davidson, to see if they could possibly shore up a little bit of additional funding, and that did not work out for them. So this is the story going forward. Very disappointing news. Josh and I, like I said, have reported on this bike a handful of times. Just a very cool company, a very cool product. However, this is such a tough thing going on out here in EV land. And right on the heels of this story, Harley-Davidson also released some of their numbers for their EV company, which is Livewire. And those numbers are also not awesome. They are massively in debt because it is just a ton of money to start any company, right? But especially these EV companies. There's a lot of research and development. There's a lot of new tooling. There's a lot of new production. It isn't like it's a known entity, and they're running these massive deficits. And Cake is just a much smaller guy and just couldn't quite float it, unfortunately. So this is a sad bit of news. Josh, I'd love to hear your opinion. As much as I love this bike was quite expensive. And on the flip side of, like I mentioned, Harley-Davidson releasing its numbers were also weird. There also was a report coming out from overseas about European market and what percentages of EV owners, what they're buying into. And the lion's share, aka like 75% of what is actually selling, is the equivalency in EV of 125 cc's or less. So what that means is e-bikes, smaller guys, little guys, commuters, not these $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 e-motos that are in this style. So what do we make of all this? Is this the canary in the coal mine? Is this something to be looking out for? Or is this just not or were they just too soon? What do you think, Josh?
There's a couple of things with this. So to me, is like some of the other ones that we've talked about in this EV space, they're startups. When you look at how many startups make it, it's a very small number. That being said, these are bikes that have cool products. They catch our eyes, they catch our imaginations, but they're still startups. It's the tadpole in the pond thing. I mean, it's a very small number of tadpoles that actually turn into frogs. Same thing with this, I think. And just because it's a cool looking tadpole and it swims really well doesn't mean it ends up getting eaten by a bass. That being said, I don't feel it's a canary in the coal mine. I feel that when you look at interest rates, inflation, things of that nature, it has become difficult for companies that have this amount of money hanging out there to survive that type of thing. A lot of them, when they saw COVID, I mean, we know how the industry went with COVID. That ride is eventually going to end, and we're seeing the end of that ride right now. So there needs to be that adjustment for it. Unfortunately, companies with great ideas like Cake are going to go by the wayside because of that. I mean, the fact that Kawasaki's coming out with stuff, the fact that other companies are coming out with stuff, I believe Yamaha's working on something. That to me says that there's no canary in the coal mine of EVs going away. Zero has done very well. So when I see stuff like that, that tells me there's no canary in the coal mine. What it does say is startups happen and startups sometimes don't happen.
You are correct. I totally agree with your analysis here, especially with, the realization that startups this is a hard game. This is a hard business. And unfortunately, they just couldn't quite firm up the cash. Now, does this mean this is dead forever? Who knows? We're all going to have to wait and see out here. So, Josh, what you got going on for your second story?
Once again, we're going to China via Italy or Italy via China. I don't know which way we're going here, but we are overseas someplace on this because we are going to talk about the Benelli TRK 702 and the 702X. But they are coming to the U.S., so it's Italy to China via the U.S., or it's one of these. Nonetheless, this bike is slated to come to the U.S. here. It is a 698cc liquid-cooled parallel twin. Like everything else now, it's a parallel, 70 horsepower approximately at 8,000 RPM, 51.6 foot-pounds of torque, around 6,000, six-speed gearbox with a slipper clutch. This uses a steel trellis frame, upside-down forks. We've got about 5.5 inches of front travel. We've got about 6.8 inches of rear travel. And this kind of points to what we were talking about before, that there's a lot more of these bikes that are getting to be more street-oriented, which is great. That's where people are taking them. This has a 32.5-inch seat height. It rings in at 474 pounds. Front end, 320-millimeter brakes, two-piston calipers. The rear is a single 260 with a single piston caliper. Both have ABS, so you can just grab a handful of that and not toss yourself into the ditch there. 19-inch front wheel, 17-inch rear wheel. These are spoked. They come with Pirelli Scorpion tires. So once again, you're not going to go single tracking on this, but you're going to hit gravel roads and something might even be some dual track on it. 5-inch TFT display with Bluetooth connectivity and sat-nav app support, which I found very interesting. LED headlights, taillights, turn signals, 5.3-gallon fuel tank, because that is you want to go places. USB and USB-C sockets, heated grips and seat available, taller windscreen, engine guards, and luggage options. Wow, can't even talk today. Those are all available. This has an MSRP of $84.99. Now, there's also the non-X version, which that comes with 17-inch wheels on it. So that's 17-inch front and rear. It's got shorter rear end travel at 6 inches instead of, what did I say the other one had? What was it? Was 6.8, so a little bit more squatty. More powerful front brakes because they have 4 piston calipers on them. That goes for $78.99, so a little bit less expensive, and especially if you're going to be more street-oriented, that is the way to go. They are both available in anthracite, forest green, white, which I believe we have a shot of, and moon gray. Obviously, the X is the more off-road focused. The 702 is better for those of you that wish to stay more on paved and say, hey, look, this is a tar and chip road, or this is a gravel road that I would still like to explore. Or, both of them, because of the suspension travel, would be great for Ohio because of the roads we have here, especially as we're coming out of winter. Go ahead and hit that pothole. You'll be just fine. What are your thoughts with these Benellis, Jacqui? We talked with the Africa Twin, how once again, they decided to do something more street-focused. I think Benelli and some of the others, we're seeing more and more of these that are 70/30, 70% street, 30% off-road. They're going to do better than your Goldwing off-road, but they're not going to do as well as your 500 EXCF. What are your thoughts with these here? And what are your thoughts with the trend?
Well, first of all, any bike can be an adventure bike if you want it bad enough, Josh. So I'm going to have to go ahead and
Correct.
take issue with your gold mine not being willing to go off road, because there's several videos on YouTube that would
I
be
have seen those.
contradictory to what you're saying right there, and they're pretty amazing. No, so I absolutely really like these bikes an awful lot. I definitely was checking this out a handful of years ago at EICMA when they released the couple of the new colorways. That green is just really slick in person. It's a fantastic looking bike. These machines, by the way, happen to be fantastic sellers in European market. I
Yes.
believe they're number one selling motorcycle in Italy. Or some,
Yeah.
or in Central Europe at the least. They're doing very well. So what that says to me, and the Africa Twin, and a lot of these bikes right now that are in the adventure space that are starting to like kind of look a little more street, it's because the customer is dictating what they want.
Yep.
The tail is wagging the dog. The customer is letting these OEMs know that they like this style, they like the upright riding, they like the fact that it might be able to go do a little bit of dirt, but they're really riding these in their everyday daily lives. So that's
Yep.
kind of what I think about that. But I am a big fan of these bikes. I think this is another really interesting, very value driven proposition at what, $8,500 for the one that's totally zooted up. I think that
Yeah.
that's a really screaming hot deal, and that bike on the screen right now is very cool. I think that is a great looking bike.
No, I agree with you. And I also agree too. It's a comfortable riding position. You can take these things. They are meant to do big miles. But they're easy enough to ride to the store. They're easy enough to ride to work. You can commute on them. So I see the adventure bike like this taking the place of the old UJM, the Universal Japanese Motorcycle, the old Nighthawk, the old CB750F, those types of bikes that used to just do everything. They didn't do anything great, but they did everything. These bikes are those.
I wouldn't disagree. These are a little bit of a, Swiss Army knife does everything. Commuter scooter
Yep.
also will go play in the dirt a little bit type of bikes. Yeah, so thank you for bringing those to our attention. I'm very excited to see that those are going to be in U.S. market,
Sure.
and I think they have a very interesting future here because, like I keep mentioning, they are really going like hotcakes in European market. So we'll see what happens. Now, for our final story for today, a little bit of a bittersweet story, but after 120 plus odd episodes, Josh and I bringing you the news every single week for well over 2 years out here. Josh and I both are moving on to several different projects. Josh, would you like to go ahead and give a little bit of a sign off or a shout out before we wrap up today's program?
To me, no, it's been a heck of a lot of fun. I appreciate it. I've appreciated working with you, Jacqui, and I will see some of you out on a dirty road someplace.
Or not, because Josh doesn't like people. So don't try to communicate with him.
Correct.
Don't look
Correct. You'll
directly in his
see
eye.
me. I'll just wave.
He's just gonna skitter away on his 25 million-year-old dirt bike. He'll be creeping on out of there.
I'm
Yeah,
good
but
with it.
thank you so much. It has been a hoot. We've had a lot of fun over the last 2 years. I know Josh is terrifically busy with his very successful other side projects, including the very beautiful podcasting studio that you see him in right now. So congratulations on all of the success and going forward. And I also have some other projects waiting in the wings for me. This program will be continuing here on MPN though. So make sure you go ahead, hit that notifications on, click that like, click that subscribe, just like you've been doing for the past 2 years, because you're not going to want to miss it. So with that, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching every week for the last 2 years. We appreciate you. Ride safe, everybody.